Following commentary, we are exploring listening to albums. It is a lost art form. We took an hour out of our day. We switched off the phones, we switched off the computers, we did not answer the door. We sat down and we listened to the artist's vision and concept. Talking Heads, Remain in Light. Released on the 8th of October 1980, Remain in Light was the fourth studio album from Talking Heads. It was produced by Brian Eno and recorded in the July and August of 1980 in Compass Point Studios in Bahamas and also Sigma Sound in Philadelphia. The artwork for the album was created by Tina Weymouth, the band's bassist, and Chris France, the drummer, using the computers at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and design company M&Co. This album reached number 19 in the States and number 21 in the UK. The band were formed in 1975 in New York. David Byrne as lead vocalist and guitarist Jerry Harrison on keyboard, together with Weymouth and France, who we have mentioned. David, Chris, and Tina were alumni of Rhode Island School of Design and formed the Artistics in 1973. Weymouth was France's girlfriend and used to transport the band around. The band dissolved the following year and moved to New York, where they shared a communal loft. Chris persuaded Tina to learn how to play the bass, as they were unable to find a bass player for the band. The band opened for the Ramones at CBGB's in June 1975. The band's name is the term used to describe the head and shoulder shot of a person talking on TV. Rather like this person talking on TV. All content, no action. Not like me. The band were able to draw a following and were signed to Sire Records in November 1976. This was after they had recorded demos to try and secure a deal at CBS unsuccessfully. Jerry Harrison joined the band in 1977 on keyboards. He had previously been a member of Jonathan Richman's band, The Modern Lovers. Talking Heads are thought of as a new wave post-punk band. The term art rock, which is also used, I consider to be the most accurate. Remain in Light drew on the influence of Nigerian musician Fela Kuti and in particular his 1973 Afrobeat collection Aphrodisiac. Brian Eno was reported as being reluctant to work on this third album with the band. The instrumental demos were presented to him and changed his mind. Band relations should be alluded to here. Chris and Tina were married, and Tina was not loving David Byrne's excessive control over Talking Heads' direction. Chris France was not open to leaving the band. The couple vacationed in the Caribbean. They hung out with Sly and Robbie and became involved in Haitian voodoo religious ceremonies and practiced with several kinds of native percussion instruments. They ended the trip by purchasing an apartment above Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas. How very nice if you can do that. The recording process for the album was not plain sailing. David Byrne was experiencing writer's block and his vocals were sitting stilted in the mix. Brian Eno, a super producer, commanded that difficult sonic work be achieved expediently, and this created something of a pressure cooker for the sound engineers on this album. Rolling Stone magazine in 1989 regarded this as the fourth best album of the decade. So let's get on and talk about the songs. Born Under Punches, The Heat Goes On. It's super funky. The instrumentation is alive with energy. It's peppered with early arcade game simulations. The Heat Goes On groove at the end works as an upbeat chant. It makes you completely understand what Chris and Tina went on to do in the Tom Tom Club. Cross-Eyed and Painless. In terms of continuity, this song works as part of this album, yet I'm not as excited by it. There's a reference to the rise of rap in this era with David Byrne popping out a verse. The Great Curve. This track picks up the pace again. Sometimes the world has a load of questions. Sometimes it seems the world knows nothing at all. This is beautifully produced and the chants are energized and relevant. The guitar in this reminds me of Robert Fripp on Fashion. The lyrics are amusing, it's transportive and is definitely one of my favorites on this album. I'd like to have heard this at a club back in the 80s. Once in a Lifetime was released as a single in 1981, is probably the most famous song on this album. It's probably Talking Heads' most famous song. Brian Eno was not a fan, however, and only as a result of the melodic chorus line did the song make the album at all. The song was top 20 in the UK and Ireland, top 30 in Holland, Australia and Canada. The lyrics on the verse were inspired by America's swathe of TV's evangelists, and I suppose in that regard is something of a mockery of the thought processes of the average person wondering what life is all about. For my part, the way the song comes in is brilliant. It promises so much. It stands apart from everything else that is happening sonically. But the lyrics to me are ramblings, and it peters out into nothing more than an attention grabber. It kind of reminds me of a homeless guy having you take your headphones out to ask you if you can give him $1. You understand why he's done it, but you are $1 and an interruption down. The intro, though, has incredible promise, and it's part of this song. So I will be bearing that in mind. This song was all over MTV and has legions of fans who won't agree with what I've said. Houses in Motion is another single from the album. John Hassell's trumpet on the middle 8 is impressive, as it at times sounds like an elephant, and then later has the sound of something from a Tunisian bazaar. The experimentation here is appreciated, but still tracks 1 and 3 are my favourites until this point. Seen and Not Seen. I love the fretless bass here. They nail this. It pulsates and moves beautifully. It twinkles and organically gives of itself. Absolutely great Talking Heads moment. They are great when they are understated. Listening Wind. I suppose the problem with imitating a TV evangelist is that I have a hard time believing anything David Byrne says. This doesn't take away from the great and timely musicianship happening behind, but his voice is starting to annoy me. The Overload. In my opinion, the album dies on this track. I imagine you'd need heroin to enjoy it. It's Brian Eno all the way. It has concrete blood and monotonous shadings of some Bowie cast-off. A good version of what this song tries to achieve, in my opinion, would be Depeche Mode's Clean. The upbeat songs on Remain in Light are inspired and invigorating. I wonder if the last 3 tracks here were to keep continuity with the band's previous work. I acknowledge that the musicianship is great. When this album is switched on, it has some wow moments, but by the end, Byrne is braying a slow death, and it is painful to witness. Running commentary. Talking Heads Remain in Light. Final mark? 50%.